Saludos a todos, and it's that time. It's that time for episode 25 of the PGP podcast. Ready to rock and roll here with our lady there in Houston, Josh Tobat, proud principal of Memorial Pathway Academy in Garland, ISD, Garland, USA, on a Sunday night with an awesome panel of guests. Because you know what? You know what, Marty? Today is about promoting 23 awesome educators, but not just educators, 23, but all educators from around the world, because you know what, we all have a passion, we all have a why, which is the passion of educating our kids, and we're ready to promote it on this awesome platform and in this great book right here by the beautiful lady with such a tender heart that really lulls this caveman, Barbara Bray, and we're gonna have her in the show in a little bit right now. But how are you doing there, Marty?
Hey, Josh. Good evening. I'm doing great, actually. I'm in the RGV again. I'm not in Houston. I'm going back to Houston on Wednesday. I'm down here doing some more PD and just really enjoying myself. I miss Rio Grande Valley back in the 956, back in my home stomping grounds, but I love it. But I'm ready to go home again.
Now, Dr. Moreno, again, we might have a brand new person seeing us from Iowa. They don't know who the RGV is.
The Rio Grande Valley is, let me tell you, drumroll, it is actually the southernmost point of Texas. So I can put one foot in Mexico and the other one in Texas. That's how people think, Josh, believe it or not, that the southernmost point of Texas is San Antonio, and that's not true. There's still hundreds of miles south of San Antonio. And so I'm at the very, very tip, about maybe 5 miles away from the border.
Right. Well, people think that El Paso's in New Mexico. So I'm like, come on, people. Come on. Let's get, we're not studying geography that good right now in high school. But hey, you know what, Marty? You know how we get started off with a Chinchilagua moment. Chinchilagua, what is that? It's a game. It's a game played in Mexico where people line up against a wall, against a tree, and you duck, and then you yell, Chinchilagua y arriba, boy, and you run and you jump on top of your friend, on top of your cousin, on top of your uncle, on top of your mama. I don't know who's playing Chinchilagua, but it's a very fun game, but it can't hurt you. So my comment today on the Chinchilagua moment is this. Hey, you know what? Football is great. It's Sunday. Football is great. It's Friday. You know, when it comes around to basketball and the tournament in March Madness, that's awesome. But you know what? There are other sports out there, and I'm not even going to talk about sports. We cannot ignore choir. We cannot ignore robotics. We cannot ignore orchestra. Everyone ignores orchestra is always like a stepchild. And that's sad because you know what? Some of the talent that those kids have playing the viola, the cello, the violin, and no one goes to support them. You know that those orchestra concerts, you've been a principal, Mari, at a high school. You know that those orchestra concerts are very low attended. It's only the abuelita and the mama. No, guys. And you know what? What's sad also is this, and I like some head coaches that do this. Some head coaches return the love to band. Right now it's band competition. Right now in Texas, they're going to UIL State. Some of the local bands are made it over there. Some, not a lot, it's rare that if head football coaches take their varsity players to support the band. And I think that those things should be reciprocated because that band is there. If you got a winning season, that band is there to promote you. If you haven't won a game in 3 years, that band is still there to support you. So we need to make sure that we return the love because you know what? A family, a community is all tied in together. So let's not ignore orchestra. Let's not ignore choir. Let's not ignore art competition. You know that the art kids, have you seen some of the talent, Mari, on some of those artists at the campus level?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Mari? What do you think about that?
You know, I think you bring a valid point, Josh, because it's important for us to celebrate and promote our students. But this is when they're most authentic. This is where their selves come out, right? So it's not only just about in the classrooms; it's about what happens outside of the classrooms where you build those connections. I can't tell you how many times when I would make the time, because you have to make that time, even as a principal, to go to every single event out there, and it's sometimes exhausting. But you know what? It's so wonderful to hear those kids come back the next day and saying, "Hey, Miss, I saw you yesterday. Thank you so much. I saw you." And I always tell my teachers, guys, 5, 10, 15 minutes, just show your face. Many kids, it just means the world to them. Maybe their mom and dad can't be there because they're working, but you know what? If I have more, even the teachers go out and visit their kids, right? The teachers, their coaches. It just means so much for our kids to see other adults value what other skills they're bringing to the table, right? And so if anybody out there is listening to me right now, please, please, please go out there and support your kids. It doesn't matter what the sport. Orchestra, I mean, you're right, it is the stepchild, and I was kind of giggling because it's true, especially in Texas. Texas, it's all about that, that band, and it's the battle of the bands, and so it's really big. But orchestra and all the fine arts is just as important as well.
So, hey, administrator, you sit in my chair and you go into a low performing school. Let me tell you, if you want to turn around the culture and the climate of that school, you better be at every event. You better be at every event. And those kids, and let me tell you, hey, administrator, you know who gives you the best scores? Those orchestra kids and band kids. So FYI, you got to make sure you promote all programs to ensure that you not only engage and promote the culture and climate of that campus, but bring the love and pride for that school. And just a little summary. Remember, let's go back to episode 8, Mari. We have our very first superintendent roundtable. Remember, we had Dr. Joe Clark, Peter Finch, Sandra Jo Galvan, Glenn Robbins, Donya Ball. They were here. So go back and check out episode 8 of the superintendent roundtable. But you know what? Enough of Flash from the past. Enough of Chinchilagua. It's time to bring on Grow Your Why. Some of the awesome authors that have been in the very back listening to me rant and rave about orchestra and choir. Welcome, panel. How's everybody doing? Thumbs up. Yes?
Great.
All right, cool. Just I'm hearing a little bit of feedback, so if someone is not on mute, let's make sure we put yourself on mute. We're gonna go around the table and introduce yourselves. I want you to tell the audience a brief background about yourself. You can talk about your family, your academic background, your current jobs, the roles that you served. Let them know who these authors are. And I cannot start without making it about this lady right here. She has to be the catalyst to everything. Barbara Bray, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself.
Oh, Josh and Mari, thank you so much. I'm just loving this because I'm the, like you said, a catalyst. It was just such a joy, bringing everyone together and bringing their stories together. So I just can't believe I'm here. So my background is I've been around a long time. I'm what you call a digital pioneer. I started a long time ago thinking, wow, love computers, need to learn about them. So I took them apart, put them back together again. Then I started doing all these other things. Next thing, I wrote grants, and I was a project manager, and then a technology coordinator. And then it just kept growing and growing because I just was so curious. And my family kept saying, what's wrong with mom? Because I was just going crazy with it, but I loved it. And I've been doing this for some time and wrote 2 books on personalized learning. And after that, I started a podcast. And the podcast started in 2017. And everyone in my book has been on my podcast. And they had shared stories with me that, oh, they touched my heart. I said a few times someone said, I've never told anyone this before. And I went, I'm putting this on the internet. Sure you want to share that? And they all said yes. And some of the stories just, in fact, when people were saying they wanted to write the stories in Grow Your Why, few said, I have this story or this story, I'm not sure. And so we ended up working together to figure out which ones were there. But I did write a book before that called Define Your Why. And that's where I wrote practical strategies, how you can define, figure out your purpose. And there were 26 vignettes, but not the long stories and the beautiful stories. And that's why I had to have Grow Your Why. So that's me. Oh, you're muted.
We never learned anything from COVID. Oh, Lord, how embarrassing. Hey, and I just like to give a big shout out to Dot McKeever-Jeever here from the Fantastic Four, supporting us like always. Dr. Amy, she's here supporting showing the love. Sheikah Houston, part of the Fantastic Four. Thank you for being here and supporting us tonight. Dr. Rochelle, talk to us.
Hey, well, hello, and thank you for opportunity to be here. So I am Rochelle Dene-Poth, and I've been in education a long time. I'm not used to the doctor before my name right now, but I have taught, thank you, I have taught French and Spanish, and I teach an emerging technology course. So lots of amazing topics, like whatever is happening, a lot of artificial intelligence for the last 7 years, coding, augmented virtual reality, just love learning. And that's why I keep going back to school. So the big joke is, what are you going to do next? Like, where am I going to enroll in? And like Barbara, I love to write and share the stories of others. So I've been doing that a lot. And I'm also an attorney and a consultant. So I do keep pretty busy, but I love what Barbara has put together and bringing all these voices. And I'm just thankful to be here with all of you today and to see the rest of the stories unfold over the next couple of weeks. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And let me close this off. Jillian, talk to us.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. And I will just start out by saying I am a native Texan. So born and raised in Dallas, lived in Richardson pretty much my whole life. So yeah, not too far from Garland. I know. Who knew? So I have been in education for 25 years. 22 of those years were in the elementary classroom down here in Clearwater, Florida. And I started out as an educator because I have one son who had some really great learning struggles. And I thought, you know what better way to help him than to become a teacher? I had no idea what I was doing. Thrown into the classroom. I was a authoritarian teacher, by the book, because that's how I grew up, right? We grew up, you sit down, open your books, nobody talks, nobody does anything, you don't get out of your seat. And I really struggled. So through those struggles, though, I have a lot of growth and had a lot of good mentors and had a lot of good people that kind of helped me along the way. So when I actually left the classroom after 22 years of amazingness, getting to know students and families and keeping them close to my heart all those years, I'm now in the K through 12 education technology field with EduBadges, and we actually provide professional development in EdTech for teachers and administration around the world. So I love everything education. I love everything people. I love everything. I love teaching teachers. That's probably my biggest heartbeat right now because it's important. We've got to keep that momentum going by helping support educators. So.
Thank you, Jillian. And she does a great karaoke on X. I loved it, just so you know. So go find her on social media and you're going to see that. And Steph, welcome once again to the show. Talk to us.
Thanks for having me back. I feel like lovely that I was just here. It feels very at home here. So my background, this is my 22nd year as an educator. I started off teaching. I've always been in secondary education, started off teaching English and yearbook and AVID at my very first school in South San Francisco. And while I was at that school, started to get asked, I got asked to do yearbook. I advocated for starting AVID at that school. I started to realize that I liked growing programs, seeing the needs of students, and figuring out how to problem solve. Became department chair there, and then ended up meeting my now husband. We now have 3 kids. We moved down before getting married down a little further south in the peninsula. we've been married now 15 years. So it's been a while. Okay. But throughout that, I continued to teach. I started a pathway at the next school that I was at that combined English, history, and science, a design thinking pathway. I taught the English class in it. And then I moved into a TOSA role. I was balancing those roles. TOSA stands for Teacher on Special Assignment. So I always found, similar to what I'm hearing from a lot here, that I was consistently learning and growing and wanting to do that. When I started taking yearbook, teaching it, I took classes with my students together at a community college to learn how to do those teach that class. And that's always stuck with me, this idea that we can model it as we learn it and grow it in other people. So now I am a vice principal at a school. I moved to a different district. This is my first year as a vice principal, but I feel like every leg of my journey has helped to grow me into who I am, and my why has stayed the same, which is what I wrote about in the book that we'll get to soon enough. But I really think that being a part of that book helped me really analyze who I am as an educator and a person, and why it is that I make the choices that I do educationally and outside of education. So I'm very excited to be here with this amazing group.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing a little bit about yourself, because us or the potential readers that we have out there, Barbara, will know who the authors are. And a big shout out before I hand it over to Dr. Moreno. Hey, Melissa Jones Jr. from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thank you for coming back and visiting us again, part of the Fantastic Four family. Go, Dr. Moreno.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, for sharing a little bit about your background. But I want to know who or what motivated you to enter the field of education. And I'm going to start off with Jillian.
Yeah, well, I kind of shared just a little bit about that to begin with, but I will say, having a son and having a child who had some special needs really kind of got me interested in the first place. I volunteered in his classroom when he was in kindergarten, and I got to know his teacher, and I got to know his colleagues or his peers, and I got to know, the other teachers and some of the, ESE teachers. I mean, I got to know everybody. It was just a lovely thing. So seeing how they were so motivated to help students, I'm like, this is really what I want to spend my life doing. So not only was I helping him and being his biggest advocate throughout all those years he had an IEP, but just being able to really be an advocate for all of those students who maybe either kind of got forgotten or were kind of in the middle. They weren't really, they didn't qualify for certain supports, or, they were not, high achieving students, but they just got forgotten or just got lost sometimes. So I think having that, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Having that kind of really helped me understand how students learn and how to differentiate, how to make sure that I reached all of those students, because that's our biggest job, is to figure out how to reach a whole classroom of students at once. So it was a growing experience. Like I said, it took me a lot of years, a long time to kind of figure it out, but that was my motivation behind starting.
Awesome. Thank you. And I bet that was so rewarding, right? Because it was your own child, right, coming in, and then having that opportunity to work with other students. So that is so awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Pa.
All right. So my story, let's see. I loved school, and I always would go to school and come home and play school, and come from a family of educators of varying roles, but I never thought about being a teacher. And I've told this story so many times over seemingly the last couple of months at doing different trainings and talking to teachers that I was working with. And I said, that, and it's almost embarrassing, but it's okay because it's kind of funny, that my junior year in college from undergraduate, the guidance counselor called me in and said, you're a junior now and you have to declare a major. And I said, but I did. And we didn't have the technology back then. And she said, well, what did you declare as your major? And I said, liberal arts. And she said, it's not a major. That's an entire college full of majors. So you're going to have to narrow it down. I said, but can't I just do all the things? And she said, well, no. So we had a conversation about what I was good and what I was not good at. And I did really well in French, and I enjoyed helping others in the background, like my family with education. So she said, why don't you give this a try and see if you like it? And I did. I really did. But I really thought that I would be in it for like a 10-year plan. But I ended up going to law school while teaching full time. And I graduated a long time ago from law school. I was a teacher first and then law school. And I've said since then that had it not been for that experience, I would not be still in the classroom and doing all the other things that I'm doing today. So, and that's because of a teacher that had a tremendous impact on me as a mentor. So that's been my compass and my guide ever since. So that's my, I played school. I didn't really think I'd want to be a teacher, but here I am. And here we are.
Wow. And what kind of attorney are you?
Well, I don't get to practice it like on a daily basis, but it does come in handy with, in the classroom when you're, looking at different perspectives. I've started to do presentations on AI and the law. And, but when I started, my main area was in criminal law is what I wanted to do. So, yeah.
Well, awesome. I'm asking because I always wanted to become an attorney myself. And so it's kind of like you're like my idol now. Like first I was able to do both.
Oh, thank you.
Miss Steph, how about you? Who or what motivated you to enter the field of education?
It's interesting. I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher. I think last time I was on, we talked about it. I had said that my mom growing up always said, I think you'd be a great teacher. I always found myself helping. She'd say, help your younger sister. I'd help her with things. I would enjoy being in a group and supporting other students. I would be happy to do like tutoring or talk to people. I had some great teachers, but I really had no idea. When I went to college, I didn't know. And I got to the end of college and was like, I have no idea. Like I like learning, but I didn't know beyond that. I found myself in spaces in college. Like I was an RA, it helped pay for my housing. I was paying for school myself. Then I was a program assistant, like all these things where I kind of was in these different leadership roles, but not really thinking about it. And then one of the classes that I took, I take that back. I had an alumni scholarship that helped me pay for part of my education from the Alumni Association. And part of what you had to do with that was some volunteer work in the community. So together with other students that had that same scholarship, we were volunteering at Berkeley High that was nearby UC Berkeley. And I remember going to that classroom and thinking, like I like that a lot more than I realized. So I volunteered. I started going back each week. And then when I got out of school, I looked more into teaching, started substituting while I then applied for getting my credential. But I kind of needed that kick in the butt a little bit, like finishing school. And I was like, what's next? And then it was like the reality check of I need a job. I need to pay for life. I need to figure this out quickly. And something about that, like finishing and that gap that I had never had my whole life. And it got me in gear to go, actually, I need to make a decision. And I was glad that I did that and then said, you know what, if it's wrong, I can always switch. But it wasn't wrong. And I've loved it. So I'm glad that I did.
Well, awesome. And now the new pathway to a new assistant principal. Awesome. And last but not least, I gotta hear this. Who or what motivated you, Miss Barbara Bray, to be an educator? Because look at you now, your second book, right?
Fourth
book. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but that's not how I started. I started in a really different direction. I was a dental hygienist. I know it doesn't make sense, but I was teaching people how to floss and do all those things, but it wasn't my calling. It wasn't what after I was in it, I started teaching dental hygiene at the local college, and I started realizing I like this. And then when my kids were little, I started working in the school, and pretty soon I told you I loved computers. They needed someone to run the computer lab. So I went back and got an adult learning credential first and realized I'm good at this. I love it. And then I started, I even was a chapter leader for the Young Astronauts. I started all these different programs. And so I went back and got my credential and worked with, I worked with middle school students and ended up social studies. I love that. And then I wrote the grant, and then I started going in a direction of working at the district office. So, but I can tell you, I just love working with teachers. To me, it's like a gift every time I talk to a teacher and they tell me, maybe what their struggles are and how they fought through it and overcame it. And some of the things that they've done, and I used to observe classrooms, I used to walk away thinking, oh my gosh, I just love them. So that's kind of who I am.
Yeah, no, that's nothing wrong with that, because just like so many other educators, they come in through alternative certification, right? They don't graduate from being a teacher. I came in, I was a computer programmer and then went into teaching. So I have very similar stories like you, but you know what? It's kind of those aha moments when you have those teachers and they don't know or they're struggling, and then you give them some tidbits and then you just feel good. So I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
So as we build up into our beautiful book, the book, everybody out there viewing us, I'm seeing those numbers go up, the book. Barbara Bray has a beautiful eye on educators, on the field of education. If you read her first book, she'll tell you about that in her background. And she always finds people and always asks a question, what is your why? She always promotes that. If you follow her on the Twitter chats, if you follow her on her postings, it's about what her why is. And now that I'm an old dinosaur, my why has evolved after 32 years from being a novice, which was making kids love history because I hated history. Then as I evolved and I saw the kids were going the wrong way, I wanted them to be very good citizens in their community. And now that I'm in this final chair on the last lap of my career, I wanna end the school to prison pipeline. No more orange jumpsuits. I'm sick and tired of that. I'm sick and tired of seeing my kids with ankle bracelets. I'm sick and tired of my kids having to leave school early because they got to go see their PO. I'm sick and tired of all this stuff. But you see, that whole evolution I've noticed having the honor of being in elementary, middle school, and high school is that starts foundationally in elementary. That starts in third grade when we start putting kids at PE against the wall. You can't participate. Or the kid was not compliant for 4 hours. Or you were supposed to be the row leader. You cannot walk the class today. No rug time for you because you weren't following the rules, because I'm annoyed with you because I got to live with you for 8 hours. And then it becomes a snowball. It becomes a pattern of behavior that is self-fulfilling in negativity. And those are the things that I've observed, that by the time they get to us in high school, Dr. Moreno, they've been fighting the system since third grade when they couldn't become the rug. They wouldn't read the Dr. Seuss book at the rug table. And so based on that big dissertation I just gave about my why, hey, Dr. Rochelle, what is your why?
Oh man, that's like a loaded question. Depends on what area of my life that it's pointed at. But I'll say this, that for pretty much anything that I do or get involved in, the thing that always guides me is like, what can I do? What time can I put in? What can I learn that might just be the one thing that somebody needs somewhere in the future? That's what keeps me going. Like, I want to be the best that I can so that I can help other people. And I don't necessarily know what that might be. So that's why I get involved in a lot of different things. And I try not to, it's easy to like just sit around and do nothing. Although I don't know how to do that. I'm still trying to figure out how to take a break. But that's what keeps me going. It's like the curiosity for learning, and just my upbringing too. With my parents, it was always about trying new things and learning it, and then using what I've learned or an experience that I had or something to help others and to share that with others. And so that's the reason behind all of what I do is if I can make it easier for somebody else somehow, even a little bit, then that makes me happy. And so that's a really long answer to a very short question, but that's why I was like, "Ooh, yeah, it depends on what the focus is." But I love what I do, and if I can be a supportive person for somebody else in some way, then that's my why.
And that's a complex. If you hear Barbara on her shows and her podcast, that's the crucial part about what we do every single last day, whether it be as a support staff through on the campus, whether it be through a company providing support for a campus, whatever it might be. It's about giving the tools, either inspirational tools, motivational tools, tangible tools to
Yeah.
inspire that teacher to take out that inner flame. Because the reality is, we all know this. It during this time coming up, this is when they start hitting the wall. Adults start hitting the wall.
Mhm.
The early November, we start hitting the wall.
Mhm.
And then the early December, it's tick, 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 putting the slashes on the wall. Oh, and then forget about it. March, woo! Right before state assessments, the teachers are going cray cray. And that's a time, and I've heard Barbara say this, that's the time we need to always remember our why. It's crucial. What about you, Jillian?
My why is, and I love that, Barbara's, one of her books was Define Your Why, right? It was give it a definition, give it legs, give it a heart. And I think that's really what I try to do as an educator, but not just as an educator, but as a person, because I don't think I could have not separated the two. Being an educator and being a human being are who I am. So to try and say that's my job or that's my profession, it's not, because it was all entwined into and woven into the fabric of me. So being somebody who loves relationships and somebody who loves kids, but loves growth and loves joy and loves, just hugging a kid, having a kid walk in that door and you don't know what they've been through that morning. You don't even know if they've had breakfast. You don't know how they slept. You don't know how their parents treated them this morning, but they walk into your classroom and you have complete control over what happens. You are the guide. You are the one who is helping shape their day. I always wanted it to be the best part of their day because I knew that it was going to be a whole different world once they stepped outside of that door. So to love them, to listen to them, to look them in the eyes. And I know, not everybody does eye contact, and that is okay. But when you connect with the student, maybe and with eyes or a touch or, a pat on the back or just a word of affirmation, you never know the impact that that's going to make. And I love the fact now that I look back and I still have relationships with students that were, from 22 years ago that are now grown and have their own kids. And it's like, and we still talk and we still converse and we still talk about the special times. And that means a lot. But I think that is my why, building those relationships, making it count, being that teacher that they talk about and that they say, she was one that listened to me.
Thank you, Jillian. And for those people that are hesitant out there, and I understand about, I don't want to touch kids. Oh, I don't want to touch kids. Oh, if you build the right connection with any single last kid, there will be no problem with you saying, hey, good morning, mijo. Good morning, mija. How are you? You doing okay? Face to face, real close. But it's about you investing that time and adding credit to that credit card with that kid to make sure that you could break those barriers, because society has put barriers on us because of a poor group of educators that break that. But you know what? The majority of us do not do that, and it's building those relationships with those kids to where they feel that they don't get the hugs. You know that. You know that, Jillian. You know that, Steph. You know that a lot of kids are being raised by grandmama. And so we need to build that bond with them, and it's crucial as part of that why. What about you, Steph? What's your why?
It was interesting. I came to understand my why. I love that Barbara put in the chat that your why changes, because it has. I don't know that was a thing that I had ever done was really start to invest in understanding that or analyzing it. I was doing a job that I loved because I loved showing up and being there for students. But as time has gone on, I found that with each kind of role that I took on, I was a person that was looking for more challenges. And I really liked doing it surrounded by other people that would motivate and inspire me. And so I found that I was building a pathway for students that asked them to do the same thing. Students were collaborating in my room on a daily basis for that design thinking pathway. And I kept asking them to challenge themselves, to do things that were scary and hard, and to take leaps, and that we would all be there to support them. And then I looked around in education and I didn't feel that same opportunity. I felt like there was a competitive nature to the way that we talk about what we're doing in our rooms, and how come she gets to do that and why can he do that? And I wanted to shift that. And that's really what helped motivate me into understanding my own why. I applied for, after some encouragement, the Google Innovator Program, and I got accepted back in 2019. And I got to go to Singapore and meet educators from all around the world, which kind of led to all of my next big leaps. And I talked to my classes about it while I was doing it. We were there for a week. And the idea of that was around figuring out what it is, what impact do you want to have on education, and what is your goal for shifting that, and working on a year-long project with the support of other people. So it just shifted the way that I thought about my role in education and the impact that I could have. So at the end of that, I was asked to give a TEDx talk about it. Like, there were different pieces that started to get placed in front of me that let me share in a way that I had never shared before. It let me then collaborate with a wider audience than the people that were at my own school. And so what I came to realize was that my why is one that has to do with collaboration and the impact that we can have when we work together on something to problem solve it. So no matter what role I'm in a leadership role, I'm so grateful that I'm a part of a team that I really feel is collaborative. And it's about the way that I work with students and the way that I work with other teachers to problem solve. But in every aspect of my path, that's what I've now realized. I mean, even in my own family, right? I don't do anything alone. Yeah, there are pieces that I'm like grateful that I've been able to write or do things, but everything was informed by what I've learned from working with other people and connecting with other people. And there's nothing that I can shift in education that I can do by myself. It has to be collaborative. So that's really where my why has grown from. And I'm grateful for it. So I'm grateful to collaborate with all of you.
Beautiful. Barbara, what's your why?
Oh, well, my why is to inspire others to tell their why, what inspires them. And what I found is I lived many years feeling like I was just here. I didn't know what I was doing. I was working, coming home, getting dinner ready, doing things, but I did not have that purpose until I started teaching. Instead, when I started writing and started talking to teachers and getting their stories out, all of a sudden it hit me. It's all about the stories for me, and learning about them and getting close and realizing when people actually can share their stories and they feel like they can, that connects them to someone else and maybe inspires them. That to me is something so beautiful. And I hope I can continue doing this. It's just, this book was it's like my baby now. I think everyone knows I've been working on it a long time. But it just makes me feel so good to read over again and again the stories. And I can't wait to hear what other people think when they read your stories.
Thank you for sharing, panel. Thank you. Dr. Moreno.
So we're going to get to each one of your chapters in just in our next couple of questions. But before we do that, I wanted to just find out from all of you, after you've authored this book already, right? So now, I mean, it's done. Tell the audience, how did you find time to write your chapter while having a full-time job, because that is something that is very, very difficult. And so just because I know Josh does not have a minute of time for himself. So I mean, I know if he did it now, I could do it, right? So but I'm going to start off with Barbara. I know you already, this is your fourth book. But tell the audience, when do you have time? Because I'm sure you're very, very busy.
Um, I don't really have a life. I mean, just ask anyone. Someone calls, I get on the phone with them right away, or it's what I do is I have a pad of paper next to my bed. I have a journal. I love to write. And I'm talking to authors that are not in education right now, just to let you know, just to learn a little bit about. I really want to write fiction and maybe a mystery. So I'm trying to figure out these things. And so what I found is writing is not easy. It takes, and what I found that it was fun doing was working with each author. I had a lot of fun working with Josh and just getting those stories out of each person was so wonderful. So the time just went right by, Mari. It didn't feel like I was, the time was so precious when I was with people. I just looked forward to it. So,
well, we're not talking about like 5 authors. We're talking about how many actually wrote a chapter in this book?
23.
That is a lot to juggle, Miss Barbara. I mean, congrats.
Well, we just finished doing narrations for the audiobook. I have to tell you, that was fun. But also, there are times when I was going, because I wasn't, you have to make sure, because no one's ever done that where they have everybody in an audiobook do their own chapters. No one's done that. This is the first time. Even Audible said, no, I don't know, So I hired someone to help me, but to me, it's like I'm learning. That's it. Every day I'm learning, and I hope people want to, listen to it and go on, and run and put them on and listen to each author and then let the author know what you think, because it's all their voices. It's just, anyway.
You sound like a proud mama. I mean, you're just so excited. You can tell from your voice and from the way you're kind of sharing. So I wanted to make sure I started off the question with you, because you really, I think, are the staple on all of this. Because having to juggle, I'm trying to organize just a family vacation, and trying to get all the family together is, ridiculous, right? Yeah. So I know trying to gather all these authors and getting everybody their chapters and reviewing and editing was a task in itself. So
I made a lot of mistakes. So everybody knows it. I think I told everyone I found out I even put my name in the tree. I didn't know it. So that was the first printing. So, and there's other things I've made mistakes. And so I'm learning from it, and I love it.
Awesome.
But I do have to say, I once did 2 family cookbooks, trying to get, recipes from everybody and publish those for the family. And that was harder.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you. Rochelle.
I forget the question. No.
I know, we were just having fun over here, right?
I know. I was just like drawn in.
So the question was to tell the audience how you found time to write this chapter.
I know. I was just kind of kidding. No. So I have a lot of hacks over the years. I think I've been writing for, oh my gosh, like 12 or 13 years now. I started with blogs and then with books. And like Barbara, Stop. Like Barbara, I had a great idea about 6 or 7 years ago, I think it was now, to write a book. Somebody actually asked me, they said, you write a lot of blogs, you should write a book. And I said, well, what would I write a book about that people would read? And so anyway, I got an idea, and there were a couple of ideas. So I ended up writing 3 at the same time, but 2 of them involved people choosing quotes that resonated with them. And then I was driving home one day and I thought, wait a minute, I got all these people in these different quotes, like, who's going to put it all together? And then I went, oh, whoops, didn't realize that. So like Barbara, the first time you're like, okay, I'm going to make this work. And then the second time you have a whole better system. But some of the things that I do that I've done for years is the speaking. I will go for a walk in my neighborhood. And I will state for the record, I do not, nor have I ever used ChatGPT or any other generative AI to do my writing for blogs or books, throwing that out there. But if I was thinking about something I was writing, or like even for Barbara's story, it's not uncommon for me. I do like paper and to take notes like Barbara does too, but it's not uncommon for me to go for a walk because self-care is important. And I have something in my mind and I have my phone in my hand and I just walk and I talk about it. And apparently I walk long and I talk really long and I come back. I'm like, wow, it's like 2,500 words. But some of those words aren't right because I don't know what I said that sounded like cheesesteak, but I figure it out. But it's such a time saver. And I've been doing that for probably 9 years at this point. And so that's where I find the time to do it, is using the voice and the technology to my benefit, or carving out time and multitasking, because that's how you can get it done. And also, if you're not the one doing the whole writing, because I love, like Barbara, sharing other people's stories, that's great. They're doing some of the writing, but then you're the one that's got to bring it all in together. So she has definitely gone above and beyond, especially with the audio component of it as well. That's just, the power of voice too behind the story, I think is just, it's wonderful. So that's how I get things done.
Thank you. And Barbara just shared that you have 8 books, blogs, speaks, and teaches. So, kudos to you, Miss Dr. Rochelle. Just amazing. Thank you. We'll go with Jillian.
What was the question? No, I'm kidding. I will say, I make time to write, and I make time to write because there are things on my heart that are so important that I want to get them down. I love paper to pencil. I feel like there is something neurologically, physiologically that works together in your brain when you're actually putting a pen to paper. I think that's why I'm an artist. I write children's books. I do illustrate children's books. I just find that there is such joy and such pleasure in putting down on paper what you're thinking and feeling. So it really is a stretch to say, it's just, it takes us such a long time, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't. It feels like it's just like a heartbeat when you sit down and you write, because it goes so fast and you get everything out. And I don't know, it's an awesome feeling. It's a very therapeutic feeling to be able to blog and to contribute to whatever. I know, Rochelle, I think you were one of the first ones I guest blogged for, and that was back in 2020 when I started writing my own blog. And I thought, all right, she's asking for guest bloggers. I guess I'll give it a try. And, so it's even like this family and this community that we've gotten to know, that we support each other, we encourage each other. And that puts a little fire inside of us that keeps burning, spreading, and sparking and igniting. So.
Well, awesome. Thank you. And Steph, how about you? When did you find the time?
It's funny because I often get that question with, full-time job and 3 kids, right? But I agree that there are things that you make time for when you care about it. I also think it wasn't ever a thing I necessarily knew I was doing when this first began. So what I mean by that was, in my TOSA role that I had, the one that I had about 6-7 years ago, I had another teacher say to me, I would send out emails to staff about things that would be useful that I thought ed tech wise might help support them in the classroom. And it was a fellow teacher down the hall who I actually texted with today. And he was the one, Marcos Cortez. He said to me, you know, your email could be an article. Like, I have friends who've written articles for like Edutopia. And he was the one that's like, have you ever thought about that? Like, you should submit what you're sending to us. It would be useful to other people. And it just was never a concept to me that what I was sharing in my job that I thought would be useful for other people in my own department would be useful outside of that department. And it like opened me up to thinking, oh, like I just never thought about it like that. And it was after that I started submitting. I submitted an article, it was taken, then I was asked to write some things. Like it started to build, and I just went, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like as a teacher, that then I started speaking, like doing more things. And as chapters came about, that felt like a natural iteration for me from writing articles. I have not, one day a potential book. I've had lots of talks about that, but right now what I can manage is like when I'm joyful and inspired by something and love a topic, I can sit down and write a chapter. Those kinds of pieces, if it comes to me, I can sit down and do it. And it often will take me just like making a time, having a little overview of what I want it to be about. And then I carve out an afternoon and I go. That's how I've always been. Like once I'm really inspired with something, I can write it. I can do a chapter in a sitting. What I can't do is a whole book in a sitting, but I can do I can do a chapter in a sitting. I often am a person where I type faster than I can talk. So thanks to my mom for teaching me how to type on a typewriter. But like, so that typing, it helps me get my thoughts out faster sometimes than I can formulate them aloud. And that piece for me is helpful. I found it really cathartic, actually, like the writing process. And so I'm grateful that people have asked me to be part of pieces, and that then providing the topic, like Barbara providing the topic, also then makes me go, how would I fit into this? Like, I don't know that I necessarily had that idea on my own, but when she posed the question, I saw how I fit into a bigger landscape, and it was really helpful and inspiring.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I guess we need to start blogging more often, right? I think that is something that's an easy thing to do to kind of start getting yourself over that hump of wanting to write. Because I mean, it's daunting sometimes. You look at a white piece of paper and it's like, where do I even begin? But putting your thoughts on paper, I think, is helpful. Thank you, ladies.
So it's that time to present to the audience your story, panel. In this book, you shared your spirit, your love, your tears. There's so many different things in this book that it's not a one idea across from cover to cover. It's different ideas. So we're going to give a little taste, like when you're at Sam's and they give you a little cup and you could taste it a little bit. We're not going to give a lot because they could either buy the book or download the audio. So just tell the audience a little bit about your chapter, Jillian.
Well, my chapter is called Drawing My Purpose, and it does go back to kind of my roots of just being an artist and growing up in the 70s. I loved taking art classes and just thought it was so much fun, and very close to my aunt who is an artist, and she taught me a lot. And just, I think, part of being a person who is creative, it helps with mental health, and it helps kind of carry you through some of those difficult times. So my story is really about my sister and I. And the reason I even started writing a children's book was because of my sister. My sister and I were very close growing up, loved each other 1,000,000%. Yep, that's her. And she got sick when she was 40, and she had a rare form of genetic cancer that was in our family. And she passed away shortly after we found out, and she left behind 2 young children who were 7 and 9. And my heart broke for them. My heart was breaking myself, but for them, here are two children who are in my family who are not going to grow up with a mother. And I thought, how can I help them? Because I knew her best. I was her best friend. How can I continue her legacy and show them who she was? So I wrote my first book called Liv Seashells, and it was about a girl named Liv. My sister's name was Lisa, but Lisa's Seashells was too much of a tongue twister, so I changed it. And Liv was a young girl who loved going to the beach, as my sister did, and would pick up shells. And she didn't pick up the whole pretty, beautiful shells. She picked up broken, chipped, cracked ones that people had passed by, and kind of dropped and not come back to. And that kind of was the heart and the essence of my sister, being that compassionate, kind soul who always kind of looked to those people, looked for those people who were broken, and looked for those people that she could comfort and that she could come alongside and support and encourage. So I wanted my niece and nephew to understand this is who your mom was. So when I wrote this chapter, it was really all about the creative process behind how that writing that story and drawing those pictures and publishing that book, making it come to life for them, was actually a way for me to grieve and to follow my pathway, that I needed to kind of come out on the other side of things, after she left this earth. So, and it was just one of the things that I said, and I highlighted this because it just says our souls have an amazing capacity to hold everything that we need. There's room in our hearts to carry forward heartache and joy together. And I think that's why I speak so much about joy, and I speak so much about, joy is not just happiness and rah rah and Pollyanna times. It is, joy comes from soul searching. Joy comes from that deep, the things that you've been through, turning that havoc into harmony. So that's what those books have done for me. I've passed them on to my family. My niece and I are very close right now. She actually is in her sophomore year at Northern Iowa, and she's going to be a teacher. So we talk every day. And she has a special heart for special education students. So I can't wait. So we talk every day. I encourage her and support her, and she's just like her mother. So that's my story.
Thank you for sharing. Very beautiful, very touching. Dr. Rochelle.
All right. So mine is it's chapter 21. It's leaning into our growth. And the gist of it is basically how I had been teaching for many years the way I had been taught. And I always say that there's not that there was anything wrong with that, because that was my experience. Also, the teacher pre-service programs that exist today are not quite the same as what they were when I went through them. So, and we all learned earlier, if you were listening, that I didn't really know until I was a junior in college I was going to go into education. So I was a little bit behind there. And in my high school, I graduated with like 600 students in my class. And we didn't have that same relationship. And the teachers knew us, but they didn't really get to know us. And we didn't really get to know about them. And so when I went to the school where I've been teaching for a long time now, after 3 years of subbing, it was very different. There were only 90 to 100 students in each grade level. And it struck me as it was just so different that the teachers and the students, where there was just this, like, the relationship that existed, where there was really, you could see that they cared about them, they were invested in them. And at first, I was younger and I enjoyed it. I got to build relationships with some of the students, but then that changed for a while. And the gist of my story is basically how I started to use technology in my classroom, and I had my students who were excited to talk about it. And I submitted them to go and speak at a technology showcase for students. And they pushed back against me. They're like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to stand on the side and watch you. And they said, well, that's not right. And also I had seen younger students speak in front of a room full of teachers. And I thought, these are things that I wouldn't want to do. And for years, students had said, can't we just do this dialogue sitting at our seats? Like, why do we have to do it in front of each other? And I didn't understand that. And then whenever I realized, wait a minute, I don't even want to stand up in front. And I still to this day, when I do presentations, say, okay, first of all, I don't really like speaking in public, which is so odd. But when you're speaking about something that you're excited about, passionate about, it's a big difference, especially when it's stemming from what you're seeing your students do and what you're learning from them. And so it just tells that story about how they pushed back against me and got me to take some risks on my own that without them I wouldn't have had. And the beautiful part of it is that those same students have long since graduated and are now on doing amazing things, and we're still connected very much. And I just never realized what an impact they would have on my life, but also on the students' lives that I'm working with now and will continue to work with because they changed me. So that's my story.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah,
Get them kids in there. Love it. Love it. Steph.
So I shared a lot of mine in an earlier question. I won't repeat those main pieces, but I will say my chapter is entitled "Taking a Year of Leaps That Led Me to Better Defining My Why and Path." And one of the things that happened, like I became very close with my yearbook students. Those were students that I would see. Some of them started with me at their freshman year, and I saw them all 4 years. And the joy of getting to have a student for that many years in your career really builds a positive relationship, both with the student and their family. And I had a family that I was really close with, who would invite me to holidays. They knew my family was in Southern California. It was just the sweetest thing. I also taught the younger brother. So that parent invited me to a women's leadership luncheon. And she said, I really think I'd love for you to just come as my guest. It was something that she did. She organized things for nonprofit organizations that were fundraisers. And that fundraiser was like inviting people to pay to come to this luncheon to hear these amazing women speak. I had no idea what I was walking in on. And at that luncheon, one of the speakers that was presenting that afternoon was a woman named Diane Bryant, who was the former COO of Google Cloud. And so what I wrote about that kind of started my thinking and my chapter, and what I gave a TEDx talk about after this was all done, that journey, was that she shared about how women often wait to take leaps. And that when she was the COO of Google Cloud, and she would look at resumes, she would look at how long women would wait before they would apply. And she talked about how kind of that internal dialogue that we have in our own minds and why we wait, and what we're waiting for. And are we waiting to be quote unquote ready for something and know that we're good enough or we're right enough and that we can do it right as soon as we get in there. And that she found that others who turned in their resumes were okay to learn on the job, and they would put it out there. And there was something that like, I felt like being in that talk, she was talking directly to me. And it was like this wake up call moment of me looking around and going, I love what I'm doing, but have I been sitting on it because it's easy, or I've been waiting and I'm scared to do something else, and I'm scared of taking a risk? And like, what does that mean when I have 3 kids and a husband and all these people, we all rely on each other. And I just remember coming home and then finally just saying to my husband, like, would you all be okay if I take a year? Like, I apply for this thing, I applied for the innovator. If I do these talks, like I start to speak more, I start to write more. And I knew it would change my dynamic in my family. Like I wouldn't be as present if I'm leaving and going places. And they were more than supportive in that journey. And so my chapter really is about that process and that journey, what sparked it, where I've ended up. And at the end of that chapter, I was in a different place than I am now, because I learned that with each leap, it became easier to leap again. The hardest one was the first one. And because I was so tethered, and I loved that I was tethered. I love making a school my home, but I was like deeply ingrained in every program, all the things that I was doing. And it took me years to untether that, because I cared about the programs I was involved in. So part of that was like figuring out, what is my own process? Where do I prioritize what? And I care about things continuing. And at the same time, like, what's the next step in my journey? And when is the right time to take it? And learning how to say, it's okay that someone else can take this over, and it's going to be okay. And those were all learning processes that I had to have for myself. And I'm really grateful for all of them. So
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Barbara, close us off with this question.
I'm going, because really it's all about their stories. And what I did is I want to just kind of share, I framed the book. Is that okay? Just on that. I came up with 3 questions and 3 sections. Section 1 was define your why. What story defines who you are and your why? And there are 7 chapters in that section. The section 2 was journey your why. What story challenged you to choose another path on your journey to your why? And there are 8, and that's Jillian's in that section. And section 3, grow your why. What story empowered you to go out of your comfort zone to grow your why? And Rochelle and Steph and Josh are in that section. And Josh is the last chapter. So I just don't know if you want to share your chapter.
I was going to mention that right now. Before he threw it back to me, I was going to say, Josh, can you talk to us about your chapter, please, sir? I know you're the host of this show.
Yeah, I just
want us to kind of talk about what, if the audience wants to know, what in the world did Josh write about? I mean, people want to know, sir.
real quick, because we got 2 more questions. Real quick, I've been blessed in 32 years to be part of 13 different learning communities. And my last 2 have been, thank you, Dr. Rochelle. Appreciate you being here. God bless you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And the last 2 have been campuses that have been turned around thanks to the blessings that we have at Socorro High School and at Memorial Pathway Academy. And all of these schools have been either low rated or really problematic because of the nature of the student. And working through all that everyone bonded together to turn around. Mari, you've had the honor of being at MPA. And all I could say is numbers don't lie. At Socorro High School, a school of 2,550 kids, right next to the actual border wall between Juarez and El Paso. It's literally right there where we have 500 kids coming in from another country daily. That school, that was a D- school with 2 principals, was so chaotic. 2 principals, was a stereotypical fights everywhere, 400 kids showing up whenever they wanted to, tardy to school. You know, what you hear about was facts at that campus, nonstop fighting. In 3 years, that went from, thanks to all the team members there that believed in our students. And it wasn't there, but bringing those structures in place to believing in kids, the kids will always rise up to it. Went from a D- to a B- in 3 years. It had 3 distinctions. It went from an 82% graduation rate to a 91% graduation rate in 3 years. And let me tell you, that is not easily done. And that can only be done by only one way, creating a climate and a culture of love, appreciation of everybody at the campus. And that you have lived that, Mari, walking in our current home, and at Socorro, that was similar, the same thing, just at a smaller scale at Memorial here in Garland. And it's about believing in each other, and most importantly, believing in the kids, because kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And ultimately, that was the goal of maintaining and providing structures. And all that had a genesis because I was that kid. I was that loser in high school that had to learn English. I was that kid that was a drunk. And I mentioned this many times, Mari, here on the podcast. I was that loser that never did anything, and I was called a loser in school. And so my job was to make sure that I take all those scars and that damage, whether at the campus level or by my family, which I'm a product of a child of divorce, and make sure that I provide a Linus blanket, that every school that I walk in, I provide that comfort level, because not all of our kids come loved, appreciated, or heard. So that's pretty much what my chapter is, and Grow Your Why.
Can I just say one thing, since you are so I had to put it last because I just loved it. And he calls it Thank You Cards. That's the title of the chapter because there's a story around that. And I want people to read it and then reach out to you because it's just amazing, your story anyway. It's just, and I really appreciate that you shared it in my book.
Thank you, but thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Moreno, come on. Let's finish off strong. Let's go.
We're going to finish up strong. I promise.
Let's go.
All right, you guys. This really quick question. So tell the audience about an event which inspired you and solidified your passion for education. So I know we all have those stories, right? About something that happened in your life, something that happened with the kids. So it's actually a two-part question. So I'm going to have you guys start off with that one. And then real quickly, what other projects are you involved with outside of your current role? Okay, so that's the two-part question. So let's start off with Jillian.
So the first one was an event.
Yes, it's an event that solidified your passion for education.
Gosh, I don't know if there was a particular event, but I will say it was a particular person who believed
Okay.
it.
I'll take it.
I started out before I actually got my teaching certification here in Florida. I was a paraprofessional underneath a teacher who taught students with varying exceptionalities. And she was my mentor, and she showed me what it meant to meet each kid where they were. And that was it.
Awesome. And what about, are you involved in any other projects outside of your current role?
I am still writing. I think I've written 6 children's books. I still do art. I'm kind of involved in our local art community here, and just kind of that's exploded. And I do also illustrate. I'm illustrating 2 more books for 2 other authors right now. So that'll be finished and wrapping up within the next year.
Wow. Awesome. Well, congrats. Barbara, how about you?
Well, I can talk about something that happened about 10 years ago, I guess. Is that too far back?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. I was working in a school with it's middle school, and I was working with several teachers, social studies teachers and language arts teachers, and they wanted the kids to do something around ancient Egypt. And I said, why don't we ask the kids what they would like to do if they're going to do a project, and then maybe we can have a showcase kind of thing. And the kids came up with being ancient Egypt travel agents. And it turned out so cool that this one kid who was very quiet comes up to me and says, Miss Spray, do you think that we could have costumes? I can design them. And he's like, 6th grade. I'm just thinking, 6th grade boy. He figured out a way to get all the parents involved. And this is I don't know if you know Oakland, California, down near the Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
These are kids, many of them, we're trying to keep them from getting into gangs and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, he came up with the parents bringing all different color sheets, manila folders for the little things around here, an aunt that worked for Michael's, and they got all the, and they ended up, they forced the school to do a showcase, and we ended up having 500 people showing up for 320 kids. It was amazing. In fact, the kids went out and went to Costco and asked for, food, and they didn't cost us anything. They got all the sponsors. I just was so proud of them. And that meant a lot to me to know that kids have a voice and give it to them and then they can do it. And that was something that still sticks with me.
Awesome. Thank you, Barbara. That was such a sweet story. Thank you. Rochelle, how about you?
Well, it ties into what I wrote about kind of, but for me, it was like the students that I started with at those showcases, some of them were in 7th and 8th grade, never really lifted their heads up to talk. And over each year, I started to get out of the way. Like I would introduce like a different tool and they would come and talk about it. And then they didn't really necessarily need me anymore. So I just stood at the side. And I think that their senior year, I said, my name is, and these are my students, and they're going to lead. And it was a room full of like 200 some educators. The other thing is they started to call me mom too. So that kind of, you know, and I still get text messages. One of the students just got married in May. It's crazy how long I've known that group, but what an impact they made. So that experience is what kept me going and moving forward when, like I said before, I didn't know that I would stay in it for a long period of time. And besides my daytime role of teaching, I do consult full time and I work with school districts and some different ed tech companies. And I love that. I get the best of like all the worlds. And currently finishing up another book edits and I just got done writing some curriculum for some AI for fifth graders and some adult learners. I've been doing a lot of writing lately, but I'm excited. Had some training that I did for some educators who really didn't have any for AI, and I just get joy out of helping others. And when I see their face, like, do you have any idea that used to take me 3 hours to do, and I just did it in 3 minutes? I'm like, I know. Now you're going to get so much of your life back. Like, so yeah, it's just fun to just be in this space with the kids and with the other educators. So
Awesome. Thank you. And Steph, what about you? A story or an event?
Yes. Okay. So I was thinking as I was listening, there's been so many, and I feel really grateful about that. But one thing that when I was chairing the pathway and teaching English, one of the projects that we would do was called the Person of Inspiration Project. And we would read a book that had inspirational characters in it. But for me, like I always wanted, if we're going to be reading something, like it needs to connect to who we are, and we need to be able to connect as a classroom. So the idea for this project came about where students would pick a person. Could be someone in their family. It didn't have to be. It could be someone, a teacher or a coach, anyone that they considered an inspiration to them. And we listened to, there is a podcast here called StoryCorps, put on by NPR, National Public Radio. And we started to listen to other people's stories. And so I was always incorporating technology in some way. And we talked about, as a class, how can we record the stories that they were when they interviewed. So we talked about how to interview someone and really make it an interview that's rooted in gratitude for what they've done for you and how to learn their story. And so students, they wrote all their questions, they did all of this. And at the time, so you could look this up if this helps for anybody, StoryCorps had a professional recording booth. And it happened to be in San Francisco. So we're about an hour from San Francisco, where we were located. So I talked to students about, there was a way that you could do it via their app, where you could record in their application or upload it. And all these stories go into the Library of Congress. Like, it's a real thing that exists. Anybody can do it. They have, they promote it right around this time. It's called the Great Thanksgiving Listen. And it's about learning, understanding.
I think we lost her. There you are.
Sorry, I don't know. Maybe 3 children on the internet. I always say it's something. Okay. So it's really about honoring that the people's history is our history, is really the way that the Library of Congress promotes that. So that was a long intro to say you should also do it. But I had one student, Aisha. She was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I will never forget that she interviewed her grandfather, who was 100 years old. And she talked openly about her family and being African American and what it meant to be somebody who was 100 years old and what the United States looked like 100 years ago. Oh gosh, I'm going to cry like thinking about it. Okay. And then what we would do, because it was part of my final. So for my final, students would invite the people they interviewed. And it was a thank you presentation. They presented about that person and they thanked them. And we were in like group panels that were all over the school. And there were so many tears, and it was beautiful. And she traveled with her grandfather and their whole family to San Francisco to record. It's in the Library of Congress, to record their interview. And he wrote me, the family wrote me with her a few years later that the grandfather had passed away, and how powerful it was to have that recorded experience for their family that they got to have. And I would say that project was a piece that inspired me to keep working in that way and to keep connecting and learning and growing. Like the students that she inspired in that room, the parents she inspired, the families that she inspired, and that her grandfather inspired. It was powerful and so beautiful, to the point where, like, I've never even written about it, but I would say it was one of the most moving experiences. We continue to do that project for all of my years in the classroom, and I loved it every single time. It was the way that we would close our fall semester.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Those are great stories.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. And in terms of what I'm doing, I would say I'm paused right now. Being a vice principal, I'm letting myself pause, purposefully paused, in terms of outside pieces. But I am still, I did some work for Figma over the summer, an ed tech organization company. They invited me to ISTE to support at their booth, and that was amazing. And so I'm still doing some coaching for their newest cohort of designers, and doing that on the side. I have consulting, but I've paused. Right now I'm joyful in learning about my new role as a vice principal, and I'm happy about that.
Awesome.
All right, let's close off. Here we go. Ladies, you guys got the lightning round. You got the lightning round questions. And I'm gonna have to go. If you're taking too long, no, don't get offended. We're not doing a dissertation or reading Moby Dick. We're gonna go quick, hot and heavy. Jillian, you're gonna start off with you first. Lightning round. Give advice to a new teacher.
The teacher trio: giggle, grow, and glow.
Say it again.
Giggle, grow, and glow.
Love it. Read a note, an email, a text from a teacher or student that inspired you.
My jar. I have a student who brought these to me 2 years ago. I pull them out when I need encouragement. This one says, "You got this." And I keep it on my nightstand right here next to my bed and read them all the time.
Love it. That's so awesome. Send some flowers to a current educator who inspires you.
It'd have to be Olivia Chan. If you know her, she's one of the biggest, best-hearted human beings in this whole wide world, and I love her like a sister.
She'll be here next week. Also, name one person in the that the audience should follow on social media.
Ooh, so I am in my podcast era right now. So I listen to Mel Robbins. If you have not ever heard her and heard her encouragement and heard she is tells it like it is, has really given me some great mental health and self-care tips.
What song, una canción that embodies you as a person?
This Is Me from The Greatest Showman.
Oh, what's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote comes from one of my books, and it was my little friend Liv. And she says, "Don't let anyone take away your opportunity to sparkle and shine for who you really are."
What's your favorite cheat food? What's your favorite sweet? Which one?
Enchiladas.
Okay, hold on. Now you're up my aisle. Cheese or chicken?
Cheese enchiladas. Cheese.
Red or green?
Red.
Love it. Okay,
With
here we go.
onions.
How can people reach you?
Right here, Imparted Joy on Twitter, or X, excuse me. And I'm also, you just Google me, you'll find me.
For sure you will. All right, Steph, here we go. No cheating, Steph. We had this pre-conversation already. All right. Give advice to a new teacher.
Have a team.
Read a note, an email, a text from a teacher or a student that inspired you.
I just got one from someone in a department that I'm working with, where we're having some moments, and she said, "Thank you. I appreciate you and all the time that you're putting in to everything you do. It does not go unnoticed." So.
Love it. Send some flowers to a current educator that inspires you.
My principal, Kristen Gonzalez, is amazing. I feel like I'm lucky to have a mentor who has been a principal for 10 years and is awesome.
Who should people follow on social media? Only one?
I love reading Adam Grant, his books, and on social, it helps inspire me.
What is one song? One song, una canción that embodies you.
I'm sticking to it. Shakira, Try Everything. It
All right.
revs me up.
What's your favorite quote?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you.
What's your favorite cheat food?
Okay, I love York peppermint patties. Chocolate
All
mint.
right.
Mhm.
How can people reach you, young lady?
I have it here, Steph Roth EDU on all the things. X, Instagram, but mostly X. I'm most active there.
Love it. Barbara Bray. Give advice to any teacher.
You're muted, Barbara. You're muted.
Let me start all over. Unmute first. Enjoy your students and be yourself. Students
Perfect.
respect you if you're authentic.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Read a note, an email, a text from a teacher or a student that inspired you.
Well, I keep getting these from Celeste Undo. I get Aloha kits and I could read them, but I just can tell you they're basically just making me, I'm getting these Aloha smiles and mahalos and stars. And so it's sweet.
You'll see her next week also. Send some flowers to her educator that inspires you.
Gosh, you know, almost everyone in this book, I could just say, but I would like to send flowers to Rita Works. Rita does a lot for others. And I just want her to know that we all love her. So.
Who should people follow on social media?
Oh my goodness. I'm just thinking of Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I'm listening to her Wiser Than Me right now podcast.
All right. One song that embodies you.
It's Rise by Andra Day. It's because if you rise and you can turn around and you can help someone lift others, up too, because you feel good about yourself. I love that song. I listen to it every day.
What's your favorite quote?
Well, I wrote one. Don't read someone else's story. Own your story and tell it.
Love it. What's your favorite cheat food? Or sweet?
Well, anything dark chocolate. And I just love it. And then I also love Fritos, and they're hiding in my office. So don't tell my husband. Okay.
80% or 90% dark chocolate?
Oh, that's a little too much.
70%?
70%. Yeah.
All right. If you know, you know.
You know.
It's a little
You know.
bitter if I go over to it.
Right. How can people reach you?
On X and Instagram, I'm bbray27, but I'm on Linktree, and I have everything there. linktr.ee/Barbara Bray 27.
And that is such an awesome way to end PGP Podcast episode 25 with part 1 of Grow Your Why with 4 of our authors. Next week, everybody, come on back for more Corazón Más Amor for episode number 2 or episode 26, part 2 of Growing Your Why. So we have 4 more authors, and down the road in January, we're going to have part 3 with another 4 authors coming and joining us, spreading the love, because you know what? We're not alone. You're hearing these stories, and when we get that wall in December, you got to break out with this, guys. You got to find that reason. You got to find that why. When you hit that wall right before state assessments, you got to hit that why. You got to make sure that you find a reason. And all of us, we're not alone. We choose to be alone. This thing is not only poisonous, this thing is beautiful because we learn from each other. So come on back, learn from the stories. And not only that, but this is a great pick-me-up. Thanks to a beautiful lady like this, who put 23 educators together from all over the country, making sure that you in Iowa you in Wisconsin, you in New Jersey, you hear these stories because you know what? We're all fighting the same battle. And that battle is making sure that we overcome the noise from the outside and making sure we produce the best citizens in this country. Because you know what? We're in the best profession, the profession that creates all the other professions, public education. And we need you. And here is a beautiful little Band-Aid in case you're hurt. So join us next week. And then after that, we got Zandra Jo Galvan coming back and talking to us. Join us. Thank you for being here. Like it and share it. But most importantly, comment. We need you. Share it on all the boards. Your comments are crucial. Panel, please stay on tight. Say goodbye to everybody.